So the Supreme Court today ruled on the Hobby Lobby case. Now this is where there was discussion of, do corporations have religious freedoms? And of course the answer was, yeah, why? Of course they do. Well, that's interesting. So I'm going to explain that part first, and then we're going to get into the whole contraception issue. But keep in mind, the most important part of this is not really about religion. It's about corporate power. So let's explain here. Justice Samuel Alito wrote the majority opinion, and he said, any suggestion that for-profit corporations are incapable of exercising religion because their purpose is simply to make money flies in the face of modern corporate law. I love that. Modern corporate law is the law that this court has been dictating. And they're saying, well, modern corporate law says corporations are the most wonderful human beings there ever were. They have First Amendment rights for speech. They can give unlimited money to political figures, independent expenditures, political parties, etc. And then, by the way, they also have special rights. They are protected through limited liability. Do they go to jail? No, they can't go to jail. Do they die? No, they don't die. There's all these things that they get to do that you don't get to do, but they also have all of your rights. Now they brought it to a comical level. They also have religious rights, religious freedom. I mean, that corporate machine, it's endowed by its creator with certain inalienable rights. Wait, who's their creator? It's us. What are we, God? That seems pretty irreligious of this court, if you ask me. So what is the law that they are relying on here? Quote, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Now, did they pass the Religious Freedom Restoration Act for corporations? Of course not. But who cares what the law was for? This Supreme Court is the most activist court we've ever had. That's what you say. I say otherwise. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's what I meant. They meant when they passed this, even though they didn't say it, that corporations are supposed to have religious rights. Okay. Alito continues. The HHS mandate demands that they engage in conduct that seriously violates their religious beliefs. Now, corporations are guided by the law to make every red cent that they can. So apparently that's secondary to the religious mores of the corporate machine. Now they say this because this is a closely held corporation, so it doesn't apply to all corporations. Are they not merciful? But this is how they chip away at precedent. Eventually, will it apply to all corporations? You betcha, okay? A closely held corporation is one where you have 5 people basically that control 50% or more of the stock. Now, but up to hundreds of people can still own stock in that company. It's not publicly traded, and that's really the biggest difference there. But nonetheless, it is a corporation. So you're saying this legal fiction that we have created now has a deity that it prays to, and that must be respected. Gone beyond the bounds of reason in every conceivable way. Now, let's go to what everybody else is talking about, which is this idea, well, Hobby Lobby didn't want to give money to certain kinds of contraception, certain kinds of birth control. And according to the Health and Human Services that Alito talked about there and the Affordable Care Act, well, look, you got to make sure that you provide for birth control, no cost, just like the law says for all corporations, right? And for all employers. And so that's part of the law to make sure that, by the way, that to keep our costs down, right? And they say you're not allowed to discriminate against people at your company. By the way, 13,000 people work at Hobby Lobby. So it's actually protecting religious rights to say, hey, if the owners of Hobby Lobby, some of them might be Christian, but what if your workers are Jewish or Jehovah's Witnesses or whoever they might be? You've also got, or atheists, agnostic, you've got to protect their beliefs as well. And here the court's saying, no. The religious beliefs of actual human beings, who gives a damn, right? The religious beliefs of corporations are more important. So the reason the law was passed is so our costs are lower and everyone has access to the same health care. No can do now. As Huffington Post explains here, Monday's opinion was written narrowly so as only to apply to contraception mandate, not to religious employers who object to other medical services like blood transfusions or vaccines. Now, this is what makes it even crazier. They say they have religious rights, but if you have religions that we don't really like, we don't want them to have the same religious rights. So we're going to just make it about birth control. How does that make sense? In fact, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who wrote the dissent, asked similar questions. She said, first of all, in a decision of startling breadth, the court holds that commercial enterprises, including corporations, along with partnerships and sole proprietorships, can opt out of any law, saving only tax laws they judge incompatible with their sincerely held religious beliefs. She's saying, I don't believe you. How can you say that this only applies to birth control? That makes no sense. That there's no legal rationale for that. You can't just say, all right, I think it's unconstitutional for you to make them pay for birth control, but if you have other deeply held religious beliefs and you violate those, perfectly constitutional. That makes no sense. So she believes this, in fact, is a much broader decision, and that you're going to get into everybody's religious beliefs, and that the employer is going to enforce that on employees. So she explains further. She says, look, would the exemption extend to employers with religiously grounded objections to blood transfusions? Jehovah's Witnesses would have that objection. Antidepressants, Scientologists would have that objection. Medications derived from pigs, including anesthesia, intravenous fluids, and pills coated with gelatin. Certainly, certain Muslims, Jews, and Hindus would have that problem. And vaccinations, which is a whole other set of religious objections to those. Those are great questions. Now, I mean, I can go through 800 different examples, but let's say you have fundamentalist Orthodox Jews who run a closely held corporation, and they have very deeply held beliefs that have been around for thousands of years about how you shouldn't work on the Sabbath. That's in the Bible, by the way, right? So on Saturday, they don't operate anything. Now, if your insurance is paying for your defibrillator on Saturday, or it's keeping you alive on Saturday, you're hooked up to all those machines, deeply held religious beliefs. I'm sorry, you're going to have to unplug those. That's my employer's beliefs. Now, of course, conservatives disingenuously then turn around and go, no, you can pay for it on your own. So what? Go get your own birth control. Ah! Well, do you know, as Ruth Bader Ginsburg points out, that the IUD, if you were to pay for it for a year out of pocket, it would cost a month's pay on minimum wage. A month's pay. You think it's just easy to pay out of pocket? What if you are hooked up to one of those machines and the Orthodox Jewish company? How can a company be Orthodox Jews? Anyway, but that's what the Supreme Court decided. Decides, hey, you know what? I can't, it's very against God to have that machine working on Saturdays. You're going to pay for all that cost? That's the whole point of insurance, so you don't have to pay. They've pulverized this. This is comical. This is ridiculous. Ginsburg continues, approving some religious claims while deeming others unworthy of accommodation could be perceived as favoring one religion over another, the very risk the Constitution's Establishment Clause was designed to preclude. Exactly. So if you say, Hobby Lobby, go nuts and don't let women get birth control, make them pay for it, even though, by the way, the law is supposed to be applied uniformly. So if you're, by the way, a small company, you know you get a government subsidy. Wait a minute, you can take a government subsidy, but then turn around and say, yeah, I'll take your government money, but I will not allow you to give me government rules on what it should be covering. Well, that's awfully convenient and wildly hypocritical, right? So in this case, she says, but if you say that's okay, but you say the Jehovah's Witness, that blood transfusion thing is not okay, you're picking between the different religions. My guess is that if you ask them privately, Alito, Scalia, etc., would say, exactly. Because what do you think that court, those 5 justices, you think they give a damn about Islam? You think they're doing this for Seventh-day Adventists? No, they're doing it for their particular sect. You think they give a damn about Constitution and, you know, being judicial activists and philosophy and ideology? They let that stuff go a long time ago. Bush v. Gore, they're like, I don't know, we're for states' rights, except if it doesn't help Bush, then F states' rights. We're going against states' rights. Bush is president, right? And I can give you dozens of examples. So these guys, half of them are religious nuts. So that's partly what drives them. And you think they think that their religion is just the same as everybody else? No, they think their religion is the best. Plus, they love giving more corporate power. That's the biggest factor here. So let's go back to a description of what happened in the case. Some of the court's conservative-leaning justices asked why the Obama administration had granted religious accommodations to any organizations if the contraception mandate was so critical to public health.
It must have been because the health care coverage was not that important, said Justice Anthony Kennedy, who is generally considered to be the swing vote.
So, now I love that because that's the conservatives saying, hey, Obama, in the beginning, you didn't have any exemptions for churches, church-run hospitals, schools, etc. And then when conservatives yelled at you, you made an exemption for that. Ha ha. Now we're going to say, since you made that exemption, well, apparently it wasn't that important to you. Now we can create a whole new exemption, which isn't in the law, but just handed down by the Supreme Court that says that also applied to religious it's funny every time I say it, religious corporations. Okay. See, if you give them an inch, they literally use it in their Supreme Court decisions to take a mile. They said, Obama conceded something to us. He's an idiot. We'll now take the rest because of his concession. Now, finally, look, let's respect the deeply held religious beliefs of Hobby Lobby. I know that they don't want to spend money on anything that they are religiously opposed to. That's why it's incredibly weird that their pension invests a ton of money in those same exact companies. Let me give you a quote here from Mother Jones. Documents filed with the Department of Labor and dated December 2012, 3 months after the company's owners filed their lawsuit, show that the Hobby Lobby 401k employee retirement plan held more than $73 million in mutual funds with investments in companies that produce emergency contraceptive pills, IUD devices, and drugs commonly used in abortions. They have put a ton of money into those mutual funds to get money back. But wait a minute, that's an investment. They're making money off of that. If you're making money then abortion doesn't seem so bad, does it? What happened? I thought this corporation had deeply held religious beliefs. Come to find out, when its interests are making an extra nickel or a dime, not as deeply held. It is absolutely comical to say that corporations are equivalent to human beings, that they even have a deity that's a creator, and that creator endowed them with inalienable human rights, including the right of speech and now religion. It's insanity defined.